pulls out a gun, robs the teller in record time, then turns around to deal with witnesses and points the gun at the first guy in line, asking if he saw the robbery. The terrified man admits yes and is immediately shot. The robber then swivels toward the next people in line, a married couple, aims the gun at the husband and demands to know if he saw anything. And without missing a beat, the husband shakes his head and says, "Nope, but my wife definitely did," like survival instincts just overruled marriage vows. And that, my friends, was absolutely hilarious. A blonde boards a plane into her seat in economy, but as soon as the seatbelt sign turns off, she grabs her things, walks a few rows forward, and settles herself into an empty first-class seat. A flight attendant approaches politely and explains that she can't sit there because she only paid for economy. But the blonde just looks up confidently and says, "I'm young, I'm beautiful, I'm flying to Los Angeles, and I want to fly first class, so I'm not moving." The attendant backs off and gets the cabin chief, who repeats the request and receives the exact same stubborn line. Eventually, the crew goes to the cockpit, and the co-pilot smiles and says not to worry, because he's married to a blonde and knows how to handle this. He walks out, asks her nicely to return to her seat, hears the same defiant speech, then leans in and whispers something in her ear. Instantly, she grabs her things, gets up, and walks all the way back to economy. The stunned crew ask the co-pilot what he said, and he shrugs and replies, "Easy. She said she was flying to Los Angeles, so I told her that first class isn't going to Los Angeles, only economy is." A cabbie picks up a nun, and as she gets into the cab, she notices the very handsome driver won't stop staring at her. Curious, she asks why, and he hesitates before saying he has a question, but doesn't want to offend her. She reassures him that nothing could possibly offend her after all her years as a nun. He confesses he's always had a fantasy of having a nun kiss him. She smiles and says it might be possible if he's single and Catholic. Excited, he eagerly confirms both, and she instructs him to pull into the next alley. She delivers a kiss that would make a hooker blush. Back on the road, the cab driver starts crying. Confused, she asks why, and he admits he's sinned. He lied. He's actually married and Jewish. The nun smiles and says, "That's okay. My name is Steve, and I'm going to a Halloween party." Can't stop laughing. This one's pure comedy gold. A confident duck waddles into a dusty feed store, hops up to the counter, and casually asks the bored clerk if they've got any duck feed. And the clerk shrugs and says no, they don't carry it because there's no demand. So the duck nods politely and waddles out like nothing happened. The next day, the same duck returns, same swagger, same question, same answer, and the duck leaves again without a fuss. But on the third day, the duck walks in once more and asks the same thing, and this time the clerk completely snaps, slamming his hands on the counter and shouting that they don't have duck feed, never had duck feed, never will, and if the duck asks again, he'll nail its feet to the floor. So the duck calmly waddles away. The following day, the duck strolls back in, looks the clerk dead in the eyes, and asks, "Got any nails?" The confused clerk says no, and the duck smiles and asks, "Got any duck feed?" Honestly, I don't even know how that's real. A dad is walking through a drugstore with his 8-year-old son when they casually pass the condom display. And of course, that's when curiosity kicks in and the kid asks what those are. So the dad gives the calm, responsible explanation about protection and health class backs him up, which seems to satisfy the kid until he starts studying the boxes like he's comparing cereal prices, picking up a 3-pack and wondering why there are only 3, and the dad explains those are for high school guys. One for Friday, one for Saturday, one for Sunday, which earns an impressed nod before the kid grabs a 6-pack and asks about, and the dad says those are for college men, 2 each night over the weekend. And now the kid is genuinely amazed until he spots a 12-pack and asks who on earth needs that many. And the dad sighs just a little too deeply before explaining those are for married men, one for January, one for February, one for March. And by the time he trails off, you can tell this lesson wasn't part of the school curriculum. That was hilarious. I'm still laughing over here. A deaf couple checks into a motel late at night and goes to bed. In the middle of the night, the woman gets a headache and realizes there's no aspirin in the room, only in the car. Not wanting to go alone, she wakes her husband and asks him to fetch it. Groggy, he puts on his robe and trudges outside to the car, finds the aspirin in the glove compartment, and then realizes he can't remember which room is theirs. He thinks for a moment, then gets an idea. He opens the car door and honks the horn several times. Within a minute, all the motel windows light up, except one. Okay, wow, that one really takes the cake. A first-grade teacher finally loses patience with one particularly rude student and asks him what his problem is, and the kid confidently explains that he's far too smart for first grade, that his sister is already in third grade, and he's smarter than her too. So the teacher marches him to the principal's office, where the principal decides to test him and says if he gets even one question wrong, he goes back to first grade and behaves. The kid agrees. The principal starts asking basic math and reading questions meant for third graders, and the kid rattles off every answer without hesitation, question after question, until the principal finally turns to the teacher and says he sees no reason the kid can't skip ahead, at which point the teacher asks if she can ask a few questions of her own. She starts with what a cow has 4 of that she only has 2 of, and the kid calmly says, legs. Then she asks what he has in his pants that she doesn't, and the principal nearly panics until the kid answers, pockets. She keeps going and asks what a dog does that a man steps into, and the kid says, pants. Then she finishes by asking what starts with F, ends with K, and means a lot of excitement. The kid grins and says, fire truck, and the principal exhales deeply before saying, forget third grade, put him straight into 5th, because I got the last 4 questions wrong myself. Unbelievably funny. I can't even handle it. A flash flood hits an area and traps a man inside his house, and as the water rises, a rescue team shows up in a boat urging him to get in, but he insists he has faith the Lord will save him, so they leave, only for another boat to arrive later with the same warning and the same refusal. And finally, a helicopter hovers above with ropes dangling. Still, he trusts intervention and declines, until eventually he drowns. And when he reaches heaven, he confronts the Lord, asking why he wasn't saved, and the Lord calmly replies that he sent 2 boats and a helicopter. What more did the man expect? And that, folks, is comedy at its finest. A guy gets the brilliant idea to test 2 relationships at once by booking his wife and his mistress on the same cruise, figuring he'll just casually ask each one about the other when they get back, like this is a perfectly reasonable life plan. So when his wife returns, he starts with small talk about the trip and then slowly steers the conversation toward one particular passenger. And she shrugs and says that woman spent the whole cruise bouncing from guy to guy and clearly had no shame about it, which doesn't exactly lift his mood. Then he meets up with his mistress and runs the same routine, asking about the people on board and eventually mentioning his wife. And she smiles and says the woman was an absolute lady, which immediately gives him hope until he asks what she means by that. And the mistress explains that his wife boarded the ship with her husband and never left his side the entire cruise. I can't deal. This one's too good. A guy in a London grocery store walks up to the produce section and asks the young employee if he can buy just half a cabbage. The kid explains they only sell whole ones, but the man insists, so the kid goes to ask the manager. He bursts into the back room and says, "Boss,
Some grumpy old fellow out front wants half a cabbage, then freezes when he realizes the man followed him, so he instantly, the gentleman said he'll pay for the other half. The manager smiles, agrees to the deal, and the customer leaves. Later, the manager tells the kid, "Smart save back there. Where are you from?" The kid says, "New Zealand." The manager asks why he left, and the kid shrugs. Nothing there but rugby players and people selling their dignity. The manager